Hello everyone, Harry Baldock here, editor at Total Telecom. The submarine cable industry has undergone some major changes in the last few years, not least of which being those driven by the coronavirus pandemic. But from the pandemic to geopolitical roadblocks, the subsea industry has proven itself pretty resilient, thanks in no small part to its willingness to adapt and innovate. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Orlando, the CEO of Seaborn, to discuss some of these innovations, the latest trends in the subsea industry, and what we can expect from the future. Steve, thanks very much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks, Harry. Thanks for having me. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Before we go any further, I should note that Seaborn recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary, so congratulations on that. Can you give us a little bit of history about the company and its journey over the last decade?
Sure can. And thanks for the kind words. So what an incredible journey, right? Started with a handful of people 10 years ago, all the way from design, inception, development stage, all the way through funding, the launch ready for service at the end of 2017, to where we're at today, and a lot of headwinds, believe it or not, right? So the resiliency of the people are key. You kind of look at the model itself was restructured last summer in 2020. I was also brought in October of last year, 2020 as well, and there's been a tremendous transformation of the business that we're going to talk about today. But more importantly, if you think about the biggest takeaway, it's the people, right? I had a couple opportunities last summer to go pick a CEO job, and the one I chose obviously was Seaborn, but it was because of the people. If you think about their integrity, the character of the people, and their ability to execute, and some of the unfavorable conditions that they had presented in front of them from this journey for 10 years. It's one of the reasons why I came here. It's one of the reasons why I'm most proud of the employees. They could have very easily quit, looked in the industry, took another job. We've got an incredibly low attrition rate. There's a sense of pride. There's a DNA around operations for our company that we're all extremely proud of. And I think it's held the company together over the last 10 years and put us in a great position to succeed in the future.
And of course, the last 18 months have been particularly tough with the coronavirus. What's the pandemic done for your business and for the subsea cable industry as a whole?
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of things here. Let's talk about the employees because they're the most important to us in the organization. We'll talk a little bit about the business and probably talk more about the industry as well. But they're anxious, right? They're anxious of all the news that's flying around, whether it's the state of Massachusetts, the folks that are down in Brazil. We're concerned. They're concerned about their families. It goes anything from transportation to daycare to just buying groceries. We've all been through it over the last 18 months. And I think we did a pretty good job as a leadership team to over communicate, make them feel comfortable, give them flexibility. We're a phased approach now, getting back into the office. September 7th will be our first time back in Beverly, Mass. And we'll give a lot of flexibility to employees. We want them to feel comfortable. We also are trying to manage the space and time of productivity. And we know they'll be efficient. They were very efficient working from home, but we wanted to get them some extra time and some flexibility in the marketplace. And I think they appreciated that. And it's part of the culture that we have within the company itself. From a business standpoint, it actually was really well for us, worked really well. Part of that happened before I got here. I think we saw an incredible surge in sales in Q1, Q2 of 2020, like most people did within the industry because of the remote workforce. But that's carried through all the way into 2021 and has given us an opportunity to kind of readdress our capital structure around cost efficiency, capital efficiencies, and lower unit cost on the capital side for transport. But I think we did a really good job of diversifying the company. Not only was it transport between the main systems between the United States and Brazil, but it's also establishing an IP network in Brazil. You think about Brazil, you're talking about internet adoption that's close to 80%, smartphone adoption that's at the 75, 78% range, very strong ISP marketplace. There's 6,000 ISPs, internet service providers, that sit in Brazil. Gaming strong, content, cloud. It's big for Amazon and Microsoft, big cloud zone region. So we see a lot of activity around e-commerce. It's driven a bunch of eyeball traffic and has helped us establish 12 POPs in Brazil for an IP network. And that's done a lot of good things for us. If you think about it, I would not want to be a subsea only transport company that has tons of supply in the water and heavy price compression. So to diversify the portfolio is really important. Andy Bax and his team that helped put together the IP network, the customers that we brought on board. So we're starting to see a transformation of, by the end of 2022, we expect 40% of our revenue stream probably to be on the IP side versus transport. And that's an incredible change from back in 2017, 2018, where it was clearly 100% on the transport side of the house. So it's helped us. I would just say in the industry, it'll be interesting going to ITW in 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting how many people actually show live versus virtual, kind of the first big show for North America. I do believe we're anxious to get out and see customers, although video has worked over the past 18 months, but it'll be interesting to see the interaction. It'll be more interesting for us on the budgets, how they set budgets going into next year, the capacity demand forecast that they have going into next year. What we're just telling our sales teams and business development folks is you got to stay close to your customers every single week and be patient, because at some point it'll be just like the first half of 2020. They're going to come to you and they're going to have an incredible amount of demand because the labor force is back. Their revenue and sales are increasing, and all of a sudden they're going to have a demand forecast sitting right on top of you, and we're going to have to provision and execute a flawless implementation immediately for them. And we believe that's a differentiated service for us, that we can do it in that speed and that time period. But it'll be real interesting to see how people get back and how focused they are on either spending budget before the end of the year so they don't lose it, and two is planning, getting ahead of the curve for 2022 for the expansion of services next year.
You mentioned some big factors there like gaming and the cloud. What do you consider to be the major driving forces in the subsea industry right now? And how about major obstacles as well?
Yeah, it's a real good question. One I've been asked numerous times over the last couple of months. Like I could easily just pile on to what everyone else is saying right now, which is you've got raw material costs that are increasing because inflation. You've got a supply chain concerns or issues and lack of ships that are out there in the water. So timing is really important. You've got increasing supply. You've got heavy price compression. And in fact, some of the hyperscalers that drop large systems in the water go out there and swap or exchange them with other wholesale carriers. So they actually indirectly compete against you and flood the market with capacity. That's the glass half empty view. I'll give you what we're thinking. We think it's a tremendous opportunity. I think we see trends, challenges, and opportunities. Let's first start with, the hyperscalers. They're always going to build mega cables, whether it's them or the wholesale space. You're going to go from point A to point Z, no matter what, hub to hub. They need it for data center replication. It's always going to happen. You're not going to be able to stop it. It's part of the ecosystem. And, my bet is they do it every 2 to 3 years in an investment cycle based on their traffic demand and the success of their companies. We believe the real opportunity is probably the other 95% that reach out to the regional hubs. Okay, so besides the big, tier 1 hubs that are out there, it's all the regional expansion that we see that's really lucrative. And that's where the gaming content, ISP, streaming customers come into play. We think we have an advantage, just like others in the marketplace with Seabrass 1 and the 7 branching units that we have. Those branching units are very unique. We'll talk hopefully later today about, edge and what edge really means. But we see a unique opportunity around creating regional hubs off of branching units to establish more eyeball traffic in hard to get to parts of the world that are underserved. For example, in Seabrass 1, we'll be going to and announcing later this year Recife in Brazil, which is a gigantic industrial and technology hub in the northeast corridor of Brazil. It'll be the first ever branching unit that goes into Recife. We'll have a cable landing station. We'll develop a tier 3 neutral data center, and it will attract edge connectivity from technology companies, wholesale, the enterprises that it serves. Once again, anyone can get to Sao Paulo and Rio, even Fortaleza. But in between, there's not many choices. So it's going to be about picking and choosing where people want to go, what's attractive from a location perspective, where the enterprise is, and then how you can work with your ecosystem partners to pull along IP transit and peering. And I think that will differentiate and create a nice ecosystem environment for most people to succeed. So we believe staying ahead of the curve will be important. We just got approved over the last couple of months, and we're expanding to Brasilia, Salvador, Belo Horizonte, Porto Alegre, just to name a few. It's all because of tech, right? It's all about eyeball traffic, content, streaming, gaming, and ISP. It's extending the edge from the cable landing station past the core data centers in Sao Paulo, utilizing network, either building it yourself or partnering to get to the end user location where that eyeball traffic sits. And there's a lot of people that believe that's the new edge. It's the local regional cities that generate traffic that hyperscalers and tech companies dearly want to get to. And they're searching for technology solutions to get there. Along with that comes challenges, right? Challenges, you've got to build it. It's going to cost millions of dollars, and you're looking for speed to market. It doesn't really equate. Or you partner. And we've been really successful partnering. It's its own set of challenges. You got to make sure you have a great relationship. You're enabling competition within a marketplace, but you can get there faster. You can have high performance, predictable networking and more of a user experience for the customer. And we've been ultra successful. We're not out there trying to build the 12 cities in Brazil by any means, but we've got unique partners that can help us drive a solution back to core hubs and extend that edge for our customers. So we believe it's a unique opportunity. You take some of the negativeness that's happening around kind of social, political environment that's happening. You look at extending the edge for the adoption of smartphone and IP usage in Brazil. Take a look at the branching units that we have that are part of the organization, infrastructure as a service for us for a turnkey solution, and ultimately getting to that eyeball traffic. If we can do that, we'll clearly differentiate. More importantly, we'll diversify the company and mitigate any risk in the future of price compression and supply that's in the water.
You mentioned the edge there a lot. It's very clearly a very hot topic for the telecoms industry as a whole. But as you say, it's quite difficult to define. So what would your take be on that definition, and how is the edge affecting the submarine ecosystem?
Another good question. You got great questions today, which is awesome. We've been in the industry 27 years. I know you've been in the industry as well. We've heard the terms IoT, VoIP, SDN, NFV. Now a new buzzword is edge. So edge could mean, honestly, 10 different things at 10 different companies. Let's start with the concept, right? I think we all understand the concept of edge compute. It's all about moving the application closer to the workload execution. But a lot of us believe there's a connectivity edge. And that's what we're looking for. And what I think is interesting is the intersection that's happening within our industry itself. There's many people that say the cable landing station, which is secure, power, security, optical, could be viewed as a continental edge, right? An ecosystem for multiple subsea systems that's secure, that you could bring in easily, peering nodes, cloud on-ramps, inter-exchange handoff points across the world. Majority of the world thinks it's the data center population. So extending from the cable landing station, ride the core into, let's say, Sao Paulo, and there's 5, 6, 7 different large data center providers that do very well, that enterprise clients are in. And then how do you extend the edge? And that's the big question right now. As I talked about a little bit earlier, how do you extend it to a city that's 300 kilometers away? Because it's eyeball traffic that you want to get to. It's one of the top 5 or top 7 populations in Brazil. You need infrastructure to do so, and you're actually extending the edge of the network all the way into a local core city, which is huge for these tech companies for revenue generation. And obviously for us and others of how we extend that network and provide a seamless, high performance network with low latency, so they can get the end results from their users that they want. I talked about earlier, edge could mean regional hubs. So in the example I said before, it's a Recife, it could be a Fortaleza, it could be multiple places across the world that you can use branching units into to extend edge. It would be for multiple situations. Could be a government that you're working with for an open markets scenario. It used to be a closed market, old cable system. They want to open up the market. It's a new regime. It could be for oil and gas. Let's say in Guyana, could be for multiple vertical markets that have addressable enterprise clients that are looking for connectivity options in a very kind of closed monopolistic marketplace. So we're very strategic on those 7 branching units. They were put there for a reason, 5-6 years ago, and we want to make sure we can leverage and utilize those. So the evolution, I think, is really interesting. I was just at a conference in the last couple of weeks, and you see more and more private equity firms that own data center companies. You see more and more data center companies thinking about cable landing stations. And it's nothing new. You've seen people like EdgeConnects and others that are out there have been talking about that for a while. But that ecosystem of a cable landing station campus, data centers, multiple subsea systems, and kind of looking out 10, 20 years in the ecosystem is attracting a lot of interest and a lot of investment dollars. So I think that intersection that you and I talked about of private equity and bankers, subsea, data center companies, and even hyperscalers thinking about and choosing the next location and how it all comes together, and working with local and regional ISPs, wholesale carriers to build up that ecosystem, I think is important. I think this one's developing right in front of us. We'll hear more probably at PTC and other conferences that are out there. But more and more, you're starting to see people bleed into each other's business. And I think that's healthy for competition, for optionality for our customers.
I think that leads really nicely to my final question for you, Steve. Against the backdrop of that changing ecosystem, what's next for Seaborn and for the submarine cable industry at large?
So look, in a small period of time, I think we've positioned the company for consistent recurring growth. And that's the big key. You don't rely on one-time builds that are out there in the market, or IRUs, or selling off chunks of the asset. You're looking for consistent performance. I think the team's done a really good job of transforming the revenue stream. As I talked about before, we kind of de-risk the supply and price compression side of the house on a transport only business. And we look at IP as that substitute and or complement down in Latin America and across areas of the United States. I think I told you earlier, we expect probably 40% of the business to be IP by the end of 2022, which, is a huge turnaround, even from 2 years ago when it was, 6-7% of the business overall. I think it's led to more discussions and opened up more discussions, brought more customers to the table, both in Latin America and North America over the last 1 or 2 years. The core strategies for the company, just to kind of quickly go through them and in a very fast pace, we've got assets. So the key is monetizing your asset and accelerating and driving cash EBITDA, right? That's the biggest thing for us. That includes lowering our costs and capital unit efficiencies, et cetera. We'll continue to look at building and operating subsea systems. It's the DNA. Andy Bax and his operation team do it really well with flawless execution. It generates cash flow for us. It'll extend our asset, that edge, as you would call it. But we're also considering partnering or new co-builds for brand new systems, which is also exciting. It increases our asset value, and it also creates cash EBITDA if we're able to monetize it in the future. The journey that we have as a company is all around increasing enterprise value. And you do that by increasing your cash EBITDA and also increasing your asset value. We're in growth mode, and it's fun, right? We've got a small company, obviously 50 to 60 people, but we're growing top line revenue 60, 70% year over year. Along with that, we've got to scale up the organization. We're gonna have to bring in more people, but we're also gonna have to control costs. So it's that fine balance that we're trying to accomplish. I just give you a fact. Since 2019, we've quadrupled the amount of customers that we have at Seaborn. And then by the end of 2022, we'll double that. So you can see the pace that we're driving. A lot of that's coming on the IP side of the house as well. So they're really exciting times for us. We just need to stay focused on the consistent performance. A lot of that's just recurring revenues that we have of kind of sweating the asset I tell my team all the time, don't be distracted. Right? There's a lot of people that want to build to a lot of places, and it's like a 3-bank pull shot, right? Some of it you spend a lot of time and there's no return. So we're picking and choosing the products and our projects and trying to prioritize which ones we chase in the marketplace that we think really can add value and differentiate to the core strategies that we have. And we're trying to build a new culture, right? And that's always fun too. And part of that is getting them back into the office, into kind of normal working conditions, interacting as a group, which is really important. We are spread out across the world, between the US and Brazil, and a knock operation down in New Jersey. So we've got people spread everywhere. We're trying to pull them together. The key to the leadership team is just to over communicate, make sure they fully understand how we're executing and the progress that we're making on the business plan, and then recognize them for the accomplishments that they have. And that kind of goes back to your first question. It's the journey that some of these folks are part of, is incredible as you look back 10 years from now. They had multiple bumps on the road. There was tons of headwinds that were happening in the marketplace. It was a pretty good accomplishment from the leadership team to hold that group together with low attrition, to put us in a situation out of bankruptcy, and now trying to look at expanding the business from the growth standpoint, de-risking it with IP services, and sky's the limit for the group. So we're real excited over here, and glad an opportunity to discuss it with you today.
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating journey for the company, and I'm really excited to see what you guys get up to next. Steve, thank you very much for your time today. It's been great.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Bye now.